Good evening. Thank you for being with me for Bible study tonight. And we are in chapter 46 of Isaiah this week. And I just thank you for being with us. Winter hit here, and it's kind of neat, kind of cozy. So just have Bible study this evening. Like I said, we're in chapter 46 of Isaiah. And I think this is what we need to learn from this lesson, kind of just as an introduction, is that God has a plan, and He's committed to that plan. And even though we may be hard-hearted, stubborn, He sticks to His plan. And sometimes it has to be in spite of us, but He sticks to His plan. He's faithful. He is so faithful. So let's pray and get started. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much. I thank you that you give us lesson after lesson after lesson to reveal your word to us and to help us to learn your nature and how you relate to us, Father. Thank you that your word is a living word, that it applies to us today just like it did thousands of years ago. Father, help us to understand what you would have us to learn from this lesson. Father, help us to trust you, to believe in you, and to know that you are in control and that we are not. So, Father, just give us that gift of trust and faith in you, I pray tonight. Father, I pray for our world. I pray for our nation. Lord, I have no control over it. And so, Father, I just yield that control to you and trust you, Lord, that we are in your hands, and that you are a God who loves us, and that you seek sweet relationship with us. So, Father, help us to just trust you, to have faith in you, and to believe in you. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. We start in 46 tonight. We jumped from chapter 40 last week to chapter 46 this week. We really don't start until verse 3, but I want to read verses 1 and 2 because it does kind of set the stage, I think, for why Isaiah may have written some of the things that he did. It says, Bel bows down, Nebo stoops low. Their idols are borne by beasts of burden. The images that are carried about are burdensome, a burden for the weary. They stoop and bow down together, unable to rescue the burden. They themselves go off into captivity. So this is probably, they said, referring to a festival that they had, like maybe a parade kind of thing, where they would dress their idols up and they would parade them throughout town, possibly in carts. And so kind of keep that in mind, that this type of thing went on as we read some of the verses tonight. And like I said, I really think this lesson teaches us that God has a plan and that He is so faithful to His plan. We have to trust Him. And, you know, the idea of trust is to have faith in something. And faith is not always knowing, not always understanding, but still believing. And so we may not always know, we may not always understand exactly what God's plan is. We may not have an Isaiah standing beside us just literally predicting the number of years and exactly the way things will happen, but we can still depend on the fact that God has a plan. And so I think we need to keep that in mind as we read and we study tonight's lesson. This is Isaiah, of course, before the fall to Babylon, before being taken into captivity, foreseeing God revealing to him and him telling the people what was going to take place and that Babylon would fall, and they did fall, and they were in captivity for 70 years. And so we go to verse 3 now for tonight's actual lesson. And it says, "Hearken unto me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are born by me from the belly, and which are carried from the womb." I think this is God just really calling them to attention, saying, and this is literally to all of Israel. You know, we've talked so much about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, but this is really, this seems to be a message to all of Israel, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, to Israel and Judah as a whole, that you're going to be brought back together. You're going to be brought back to the promised land. I'm promising you that. That's part of my plan. And so listen to me. Listen to me. Pay close attention to this. I have born you, it says, which are born from by me from the belly and carried from the womb. God had created this nation. He created all mankind. I mean, we're all his creation. But God had specifically told Abram, and changed his name to Abraham and said, I am going to make a great nation out of you. You are my chosen people. I'm going to make a great nation out of you. And in his old age gave him one son. And that one son in turn had two sons. It didn't, you would think it was just not going to happen, that it just wasn't going to happen. Where is this nation so numerous that you can't even count them, like the sands of the sea or the stars of the sky, so numerous that you can't even count them? Where are they going to come from? And then from that son, one of those sons of Isaiah, comes 12 sons who become the 12 tribes of Israel, and they do become numerous. And so this is saying, listen to me. I have a plan. I've had a plan from the beginning. And then listen to verse 4. And even to your old age, I am he. And even to hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made, I will bear, I will carry, and I will deliver you. So he talks about from the womb, literally from the belly, from the womb, from the birth of you as a nation. I have been with you. And now to your old age, to your gray hair, I'm going to be with you. And listen to all of these I will things. Will I carry you? I have made you. I will bear you. I will carry you. I will deliver you. That's a lot of promises. That's a lot of times that God says, I will. I will. I have made you. I will bear you. I will carry you. I will deliver you. Yes, 70 years of bondage. Yes. But I will deliver you. And then in verses 5 through 7, this is very reminiscent of some verses that we had last week. Almost identical in ways to a set of verses that we had last week. Listen to this. To whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be like? They lavish gold out of a bag and weigh silver in the balance, and hire a goldsmith, and he maketh it a god. They fall down, yea, they worship. They bear him up upon the shoulder. They carry him and set him in his place. And he standeth, and from his place shall he not remove. Yea, shall one cry unto him, yet can he not answer, nor save him out of his trouble. We had verses very similar to that last week. Who do you compare me to? Who's like me? Who will you liken? Who's equal to me? And then he goes on and he says, just like he did in the verses last week, you have gold and you have silver and you hire a craftsman and they make you this idol, this handmade idol made by man's hand. And then what does this thing do? They make it that a god, and they fall down and they worship it. And they carry him around on their shoulder. And they set him up in his place. And there he stands. There he standeth. And from his place he won't move. He can't move. He won't move. And one shall cry out unto him. They'll cry out and they'll pray to him, cry out to him. And yet can he not answer? He can't answer. Nor can he save them from their troubles. Isaiah, and he's gonna do this again in a minute. He's just saying, how foolish is it? How so foolish is it to make something with your own hands and then to pray to it, to cry out to it. Something that can't even move itself, that you have to carry around. Something that you have to carry around. Just like they did in this festival in Babylon, where they loaded their idols up in these, beast-drawn carts and paraded them around. The idols couldn't even take themselves around in the parade, and yet you cry out to them to help you out of your trouble? How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is that? Compare this to the God that led them through the wilderness, the God that parted the Red Sea, the God that drowned the Egyptian army, the God that was a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of smoke in the daytime, the God that provided manna so that they didn't starve to death, the God that made water come out of a rock. What can these idols do? What can these idols do? You have to carry them around. You set them in one place and they can't even move, much less can they guide you through the wilderness. They can't help you. They can't help you out of your trouble. They can't provide manna. They cannot take you out of captivity. I put you in captivity to show you how powerful I am. I warned you and I warned you and I warned you. And I said, I'm going to take you into captivity. I'm going to defeat you. And you're going to go into captivity if you don't turn around and quit worshiping these idols. It's been their downfall all through the history of this nation of people. I'm going to do that. And he did. And he did. He said these idols couldn't have done that. They couldn't have put you in captivity, and they can't bring you out of captivity. But I can. And then he says, he's telling them again, just like he says, listen to me over here, listen to this. He says, remember this and show yourselves men. Bring it again to mind, O ye transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me. I don't think he's just saying, you kind of remember this? Does this, do you have this in your memories locked away somewhere? I don't think so. I think he's saying, you better pay attention to me. You better listen to me. When we put our finger in our kid's face and we say, you better pay attention to me. You better listen to me. We're not really saying, I want you to be sure that this is in your recall. I want you to be sure that you have this sentence memorized so that you can recall if I ask you. It's not the fact that I want you to have it locked away in there. It's I want you to act on it. I told you midnight was your curfew, and you better be home by midnight. I'm telling you, I think God is saying, remember this and show yourselves men. He's saying, remember these things of old. He goes on to talk about it. And show yourselves men. Have the courage to stand up to what I'm telling you to remember. Have the courage to stand up. Be men. Stand up and be leaders. I'm the God that put you in captivity, and I'm the God that's going to bring you out of captivity. I need you to stand up and be men. Put away these idols that can do nothing for you, that do nothing but ruin our relationship, that do nothing but break down our relationship. And put your faith and trust in me. Stand up and be a man. Have the courage to believe in me. See, it's like they didn't think God was enough. We talked about that, I think, a few weeks ago. God just wasn't enough. So let's create some idols. Let's add a little something on the side that might save us, because I just don't think God's enough. So stand up and be men. Have the courage to say, God put us in captivity because we disobeyed him. And he had the power to do that. And he has the power to get us out of captivity. He told us he was going to put us in captivity, and he did. He told us that he would take us out of captivity, and he will. Have the courage. Be a man. Stand up and believe that and proclaim that. He says, "O ye transgressors, show yourselves men. Bring this to mind again. Oh, you transgressors." You just keep going back to the snake that bit you. You keep going back to those idols that have been your downfall every time. Remember the former things of old. Remember that I established this nation. Remember that I put you in slavery in Egypt. Remember that I brought you out of Egypt. Remember all those times that I've been faithful to my word. Remember when I told Abraham that he would be a great nation. Remember those times that I've been faithful to my word, because I'm going to be faithful to my word again. But don't repeat the mistakes you've made. Remember that too. Don't keep repeating those mistakes. Don't keep turning back to idols. Put your trust and your faith in me. No other God has had a part of your history. Only me. These idols are nothing. They are lifeless. They are useless. They are foolish. They're folly. And then in verses 10 and 11, he goes on literally, specifically to tell them how he's going to do it, how he's going to bring Babylon down and restore his people. He gets very specific. Verses 10 and 11, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. Yea, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. So here, what the Lord declares, he does. He has a plan. He's going to carry it out. He's saying, I'm going to do it. I've declared it, and I am going to do it. The things that I predicted came true. The exile, the downfall of Judah, the downfall of Israel, all of those things came true. I declared it from the very beginning. I declared that I am going to rescue you. I declared that from the beginning. I declared things from ancient times that still haven't happened yet, but that will happen. So listen to my counsel. It will stand. What I say will happen. And I will do it all by my pleasure. And then listen how he says he's going to do it. Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel. That's the foretelling of the fall of Babylon. That's the foretelling that you're going to be restored from a far country. Yea, I have spoken it. Well, they didn't have history to tell them just exactly how it was going to happen. They only had these words of Isaiah, of God saying, I'm going to bring someone from the east that is going to conquer Babylon. That's how I'm going to do it. Babylon seemed like that powerful, going to last forever, nobody can conquer them nation. And they were in exile and didn't see a way out. But God's saying, I'm bringing somebody from the east that's greater than they are, and this man will execute what I say. Well, we know that Cyrus, the king of the Medo-Persians, did come along, and he did defeat Babylon. Not only did he defeat Babylon, but he said, you people need to go home. You people ought to just go back to the land where you came from. And not just did he let them go, he gave them provisions to go. So God has a plan. And when God has a plan, he knows how to execute it, even when we don't see how it could possibly happen. When God has a plan, it's as good as done. He says, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it, and I will also do it. God has a plan. And when he has a plan, he is committed to that plan, and he will do it. Like I said, it's easy for us to judge these people. Why didn't they just believe in God? Look at all these examples. But we have history on our side. We know that it happened. We know that Cyrus from the Medo-Persians came through and just annihilated Babylon and set these people free and said, you can go back. You can go back to your home country, and gave them provisions. But to them, it looked hopeless. They were helpless. They just didn't see how that could happen. And then our last verses tonight are, hearken unto me, you stout-hearted that are far from righteousness. I bring near my righteousness, it shall not be far off, and my salvation shall not tarry, and I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. God's saying, listen to me. Listen to me, you hard-hearted people. You stubborn, hard-hearted people, listen to me. I'm all you need. Place your trust in me. You know, if you remember back where he was Abraham, it said Abraham believed God and it was counted to him for righteousness. Abraham was going to sacrifice his son, even though that had been condemned by God. God told Abraham to do it, and he was going to obey. But he believed that God was going to provide a way. I don't know if he believed that God would bring him back to life or that he would provide another sacrifice, whatever. But he was on his way and literally to the point of doing it. And God said, Abraham, you have believed me, and I count that to you as righteousness. These people were not believing God, so they were far from righteousness. They were far from righteousness. What do we have in our lives that we're not believing God about? What are we not trusting Him about? Our jobs, our marriages, our children, our financial situations, the future of our nation? What are we not trusting in God? What are we doing that are where we're being far from righteousness? Are we depending on alliances? Are we depending on politics? Are we depending on the things that we can do with our own hands instead of just being humble and believing in God and letting count that for our righteousness? We have no righteousness of our own, only through Christ Jesus. Only through His perfect cleansing in His blood do we have righteousness. Only through Him. So our believing, our trust is believing, having that faith when we don't fully understand, when we don't see how it's going to happen. I remember this last election. I just didn't see how that could possibly happen, but it did. Are we trusting this election to God? Are we trusting the future of our country to God? Or are we trying to manipulate it? Are we depending on things that we craft with our own hands? Do we put our family in God's hands to trust that He has a plan for our family? And to just be humble and believe and trust in Him, knowing that He has that plan and that He'll stick to that plan, that He's faithful and that He's committed to that plan. We've got to have that faith. We have got to have that faith. You know, I remember Hezekiah's prayer, and listen to this. He says, I will not tarry. It's going to come about when I say it'll come about. So listen to me, you stubborn-hearted people. You people that are so far from righteousness. You people that are not believing that I'm going to do what I said I would do. My righteousness is not far off. My salvation is not far off. And I will not tarry. When the time is right, I will bring it about. Trust me in that. When the time is right, I will make it happen. You don't have to see how it's going to work. You don't have to help me make it happen. You have to believe. You have to be faithful, and you have to believe. And I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. Remember that prayer of Hezekiah where he said, God, protect us to show them who you are. Not because we deserve it, not because we're your people, not for any other reason, but to show them who you are. So the other nations will say, oh, wow, He is God. He is God. So For my glory, he says, I will reestablish you. For my glory. The benefit of that is, the byproduct of that is, they will get to go back to their homeland. They will get to reestablish Jerusalem and rebuild their land, rebuild the temple, rebuild Zion. So what do we learn from this? That God has a plan. He has a plan for me. He has a plan for you. He has a plan for our families. He has a plan for our nation. And He is faithful to that plan. Our responsibility, just like the responsibility of the Israelites, is to believe, to trust Him, to believe in Him, and to know without a shadow of a doubt that He's going to be faithful to that plan.